for the Armenian Genocide Commemoration event. This is one of many events that we have scheduled for you for this week, this and next week. I'm going to go through some logistics before I go ahead and introduce you to our guest speaker for today. Before we go on, I would like to share with you the events that we have taking place for next week. Sorry, thought I had that open. Maybe not. I'm going to share my screen. If you have not had time yet to look at the cultural diversity page, there's a list of all the wonderful events that the committee has put together. And if you go scroll down, it gives you the names of the events that we have, and there are quite a few next week. If you scroll a little further down, you can get more information about each event. So our next event will be on April 26th with a guest speaker, Soldin Saryan. And it gives you a description of the event. Please take a few minutes, go through the web page and get introduced to things that we have planned for next week. All right. So now, hello everyone. My name is Nane Kokosian. I'm a Student Services Program Coordinator at the Multicultural and Community Engagement Center, and I will be the moderator for today's event. Just a few announcements before we get started. Please note that this event will be recorded, so if you choose not to be on video, turn off your camera and change your screen name if you wish. ASL and closed captioning services are available. If you need an ASL interpreter, please highlight the thumbnail named ASL interpreter. Click on the three dots on top right of the thumbnail and then click pin. This way you will have the interpreter. The interpreter will not move from your screen. There will also be a link to a sign-in sheet shared in chat. All attendees must sign in. If you are having trouble signing in, just follow the message that's in chat, and we will be able to sign you in ourselves. Close to the end of the event, there will be a link to a feedback survey, which will be shared in chat as well. So please take a few minutes to give us your feedback. If you have any questions throughout the event, we will address them once we are done with the presentation, and then we will open the floor for questioning if time permits. And now it is my pleasure to introduce you to our guest. He's an Armenian painter, an author, playwright, and an actor, and was born in Beirut, Lebanon. He grew up in Beirut in an intellectual milieu. His parents' home was a meeting place open to friends from the worlds of theater, literature, and arts. During today's discussion, our guest will talk about his perspective of how comedy, art, music, writing, and theater has acted as a form of resiliency for the Armenian community, and what role it plays in establishing and maintaining community. In particular, this talk will focus on the role of comedy within the Armenian community post-war and in the aftermath of the recent struggles and tragedies Armenians have faced. After the discussion, we will follow with a series of questions, and at the end of the event, if time permits, questions from the audience will be addressed. I have a quote by our guest that I would like to read. Yes, it was a pretty awful year for humanity in general, and for us Armenians specifically. But feeling defeated and living in funk is not an option. It is time to lick our wounds, recover, and be resilient. Because life goes on, and the sooner we rise on our feet, the easier it will be to retrieve our sense of humor and face life with an open chest. Without further ado, please welcome Vahe Berberian.
Hello. Hi. Ironically, this is the second time I'm talking about resilience. I say ironically because resilience suggests hope, and being hopeful is not one of my characteristic traits. I'm an ardent pessimist, and like Slavoj Žižek says, when someone tells me there is light at the end of the tunnel, I say, yes, it's a train and it's going to crash into us. And yet I realize that in order to survive a calamity, one must nurture some hope, because without hope, there is no sense in going on. What I have here is not a lecture, but a series of thoughts, or rather ruminations, on some closely related bullet points about today's topic. I'll talk about this now, and we'll concentrate on the humor part during the Q&A. So to say this past year was a horrible year would be an understatement. Starting with the pandemic, week after week, the turn of events came to challenge my sense of humor, eradicate all traces of hope that I had managed to gather throughout the years. And of course, the war in Artsakh was the great finale that almost crushed me. I have always been prone to anxiety and depression, and like some of you out there, last year I went into a severe funk. So severe that my creativity plummeted. I often found myself crying. I had no desire to talk to people, and yet I kept arguing and discussing same issues over and over again, getting angry, upsetting friends, and trying to make sense out of things that I had no control over. At one point, sitting with two of my close friends while discussing politics in Armenia, one of my friends said, "Can we please drop this subject and talk about something else?" We said, "Sure." And then there was half an hour of dead silence because we had nothing else to talk about. To get out of the pit, I decided to give social media a break. I stopped checking my Instagram and Facebook. I stopped posting, even though I was getting dozens of requests to post or share things that I considered important. I put an end to my Sunday live show and decided to check the news once a day and stop discussing the Artsakh war, politics, Beirut explosion, COVID, BLM, Trump, and whatever topic that was causing me anxiety. This, of course, was not easy, and a sense of guilt was gnawing at me from inside because I had convinced myself that talking or arguing about an issue was the same as doing something about it, which, of course, was the easiest way to feel somehow productive without actually doing anything. So my initial reaction to discussing resilience was an immediate, "Are you kidding me? Talk about hope?" But then I thought, yes, this is a perfect opportunity to think about the subject, organize my thoughts and articulate them. First and foremost, to convince myself that it is possible to find hope even at darkest hours. So here are some bullet points that I thought are worthy of discussion and might be able to pull us out of the pit. I think first and foremost, we need to recover our strength individually because we are all damaged, and a damaged person is no good for the community, and all it can do is add to chaos, make erratic decisions, and blabber one's mouth off. At a time when social media offers every possibility to spew out whatever comes to one's mind without discretion, a damaged psyche can do immeasurable harm to society in general. Also, we should use this opportunity to take a close look at ourselves in the mirror, both individually and as a nation, because our national character is the sum total of what we are individually. It is extremely difficult to be brutally honest with ourselves, to reconcile with our weaknesses, and come to terms with the fact that we are not as strong or wise as we thought we were. The recent war in Artsakh made me believe that we have been suffering from Dunning-Kruger effect. The Dunning-Kruger effect in psychology is a type of cognitive bias in which people believe that they are smarter and more capable than they really are. Essentially, low ability people do not possess the skills needed to recognize their own incompetence. So the combination of poor self-awareness and low cognitive ability leads them to overestimate their capabilities. I think to be honest with our assessment and measure our competence is crucial because it will give us a chance to work on our weaknesses and plan the future accordingly. Also, it will make our expectations from ourselves more realistic. Freud believed that anatomy is destiny and was probably right. If you're born blind, your chances of becoming a sniper are almost nil. Our geography is our destiny. To be surrounded by hostile forces is a destiny we did not root for. However, as a nation, I believe that it is possible to forge a destiny by being vigilant, strong, and most of all, wise. We have to make sure that Armenia's fate is not in the hands of the Turks or the Azeris, but in our own hands. It is up to us to have the vision to plan our future. As Armenians today, aside from the pain of our losses and defeat, we all share a sense of guilt, a guilt for not having done enough or not doing enough as we speak. This guilt has been torturing us and eroding our self-esteem. As you probably know, I am very, very far from being a religious person, but I have found great wisdom in the serenity prayer, where it says, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. That wisdom to know the difference between what we, each and every one of us, can change and what we cannot change is the key to the door of serenity, self-realization, and growth. And when you know that it is in your power to change certain things, you discover hope and a sense of optimism, which is essential for survival. Hope doesn't come out of nowhere. It needs serious labor pains. It needs nurturing, and most of all, a realistic outlook on life. Today, standing in front of a tabula rasa, we are given a chance to reconstruct ourselves and start all over again with new hopes, new convictions. Trust me, I'm not saying this because it sounds good or it inspires hope. We all have lived with false hopes for far too long. I'm talking about a rebirth, an opportunity to rise, stand on our feet, and move forward. Because after all, that's exactly what intelligence is. The ability to learn or understand or to deal with new or trying situations. That's intelligence. It took us over 100 years to finally get over the victim mentality that haunted us after the genocide. Today, we cannot allow for that mentality to return and take over our psyche. There is nothing psychologically more damaging and paralyzing than victim mentality, because it makes you feel weak and pathetic. We cannot and should not rely on the delusion that just because we are Christians or righteous, the world must be on our side and come to our aid. No one wants to be a friend of the weak, because especially in politics, a weak friend is a liability. Do not believe everything you read. Remember that social media is not a news outlet. Make sure you get your news from reliable news sources and remind yourself that every story has more than one angle and every thesis has an antithesis. You need to hear more than a one-sided opinion in order to make a sound decision. And when you do make up your mind about something, please make sure to have a little room for doubt. Remember what Nietzsche said, truth is only a perception. Lack of doubt makes us arrogant and hard-headed and immediately puts you in an attack mode. In discussions, often we find ourselves not listening because all we're doing is waiting for our chance to spew out a rebuttal. I think reacting to every social media post like a dog behind a fence barking at every person who passes by is a futile attempt to give ourselves a certain self-importance and feel productive. This is a time to lick our wounds, to spend more time with ourselves, listen more and speak less. Within the past 6 months, the amount of vulgarity, violence, blames, attacks, and counterattacks on social media have made us all feel petty, angry, and deeply embarrassed. I have seen comments under some posts that are so vile that I keep thinking, what kind of a human being would allow themselves to make such horrid comments, let alone an Armenian to another Armenian? Now, more than ever, we should show respect towards one another, because each and every one of us is suffering, and it is unfair to assume that my suffering is more profound than yours, or what I believe in makes more sense than your opinion. We have to remember that it is possible to completely disagree with someone and yet respect their opinion or even love them. We need to listen more, gather our strength, regroup, and take action. I know I have said this many times before. In Zen, there is this understanding that each and every one of us needs to do what is expected of us. And deep down inside, we all know exactly what is expected. If you're walking down the street and you see a piece of paper littering the street, and you think someone ought to toss that paper in the trash bin, that someone should be you, because you thought of it. In my opinion, in my opening remarks, I clearly said that I am an avid pessimist. After giving it a lot of thought, I think I should consider myself a hopeful pessimist. Because as I wrote these lines, I realized that it shouldn't be very difficult to recover our strength, create a constructive mindset, and move forward. How do I know this? Because within the past 2 months, I have managed to be calmer, more focused, and a lot more productive. I have been spending more time in my studio, painting and writing, and I'm able to laugh again. Not as much as before, but enough to see the absurdity of life and recover an outlet for it through my art. If I can do it, trust me, you can too. Thank you, and I sincerely hope that as we do so, we spread civility, love, compassion, and empathy. I know this isn't something that a comedian loves to talk about, but at this point, I think it is important, you know, or I thought it's important to talk about this before we talk about comedy.
Thank you so much, Vahe, for sharing your viewpoints. And there were a few things that you mentioned, which hits very close to home, which is the guilt. You know, the feeling guilty that I'm not there, I'm not doing enough. And I know many of my community members as well felt that guilt, and it took a very long time. It's still in me. That's something that's, as you said, we have to work so hard to, you know what, we have to move forward. We have to stop being the victim mentally. Another thing that you mentioned, definitely. And wow, very strong words. Thank you. I'm getting teary-eyed again, emotional, but we're going to move on to the questions. There were 4 questions that were forwarded to you. We will start with that. And of course, if our audiences have any questions, we will open the floor to that if that's permissible. So the first question we have for you, is there a right time for comedy?
Okay, my immediate reaction to this question was, of course not. You know, comedy doesn't wait for ideal circumstances in order to blossom. But at the same time, this last year showed us that every once in a while, a slap in the face or a huge calamity can be so overwhelming, so overpowering that you can simply forget to laugh. And I am saying this because in 2 days it's April 24, and this morning I was reading something about the night of April 24 and how they gathered all the Armenian intellectuals and so on and so forth. And I was thinking that if I was living during those times, it would be impossible to find anything, any humor in the situation. I think we find, the moment we find humor, it means that we're already on the road to recovery. So there's also a nervous laughter that we experience a lot of the times, like during funerals and very, very serious situations. But I don't think that's an indication of what that humor can blossom on under these circumstances. That's just a nervous laughter. We do it in order to lighten the situation.
Very well said. Thank you very much. And yes, laughter it's a road to recovery. And we do need that laughter. We need to remember there were some good times you've had with some during bad times, but without laughter, this is my personal opinion. If I'm not laughing, there's no laughter at the house, I pretty much am asleep and I haven't woken up yet. So you really do need that laughter.
Absolutely, laughter. I really believe that laughter is the fiber of our psyche, of our intake, intellectual intake. If that fiber does not exist, we'll have severe constipation.
I love that. Thank you. I'm going to use that if you don't mind. Okay, the next question that we have for you is comedy necessary during these times?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
On that.
It is necessary because, as I said, it's a defense mechanism, and even it's a proven fact that during the harshest times, people find refuge in comedy, and this is as good as any time to find humor in situations and create a certain lightness within our psyche in order to see some, because without that light, without that levity, it's impossible to assess situations.
Exactly.
And okay, to put it more simply, the symbol of theater is comedy and tragedy. Okay, so, and they both come together. If you are going to describe a certain situation, you have to see both comedy and tragedy in that situation in order to make it more real, in order to make it more authentic, because that's what we experience.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that answer. The next question that we have is, with the recent social injustices and violence in the US, how can humor, art, and storytelling help us learn more about how we are alike instead of how we are different?
Okay, this is a very important question. I tell you why. Because the essence of comedy is to find universality. When you find universality in your humor, that means that it reaches just about everyone, and that means that your humor is rich. So in my case, in my comedy, I talk about differences between Armenians and so on and so forth. A lot of the times people come and tell me, Vahe, you should talk about the differences and how funny it is that we're so different as Armenians. I go, that's not funny. What's funny is that we are so alike, but we don't realize it, And that likeness transcends even being Armenian, because if your humor is good, and even if it's very specific to an Armenian situation, I guarantee you that if it's good, then an Irishman will laugh, then a Hispanic will laugh, then everybody will relate to the situation. So I think Freud said the first component of culture clash is humor. If you're in a group of people and you do not understand their humor, that means you don't belong there. That means you feel out of place. But the moment you understand their humor, that means that you're beginning to feel comfortable. So yeah.
Very well said. I also agree with the phrase that you said, essence of comedy is universal. It should be, right? So,
and the more specific you are, the more universal it becomes. This also I have learned.
Thank you, Vahe. The next question before we open questions to the audience is, a lot of Armenian comedy is built around laughing or mimicking our own identity. Does this help or hinder us from building community?
I think it strengthens the community. It brings us together. If we're able to laugh at our follies, if we're able to see our shortcomings, if we're able to see ourselves in the mirror as a collective and find humor in it, that means we're healthy. That means we're in a good place. So yes, definitely, humor is very important, and I think storytelling, art, and everything else comes after that. And because once you understand a joke and you laugh, that means you will understand the literature, you will understand the art, the theater, and whatever it is that you're given.
Oh, thank you. I have my own question. Do you feel comedy is for everyone?
Oh, that's a tough question. Yes, I think so. I think so. And I also believe that comedy is a sense of humor is like a muscle. It can be developed. If you live with people, with someone who has a sense of humor, you gradually develop a sense of humor. You realize what's funny and what's not funny, where to laugh and where not to laugh. And this is why I believe that in every relationship, if there is humor, that relationship is healthy. Because it means that you can appreciate the jabs that come your way.
Thank you so much, Vahe. Is there anything else you will? I know I'm done with the questions that I had in front of me. Is there anything else you would like to add before we open the floor for our audience to join in?
Having said what I just said, I think about humor, I think it's very important to know that in social issues, and for example, in racism, sexism, and a lot of topics that are very timely today, we have created a situation where people are offended constantly at everything they hear. Snowflakes everywhere, and I think that is a huge misinterpretation of humor, because only if you're comfortable with someone you make jabs at them. If you're not using humor as a way of communicating, as a means of communication, that means that there is a huge abyss and you cannot even think of making fun of anything. And I think this is something that we should seriously, seriously think about.
Thank you. Thank you, Vahe. I want to ask Hoover, do you have any questions that were sent your way?
Yes, I have about 4 of them right now.
Okay.
Vahe, you may not be ready to do this, but someone asked, would you show us some of your art that reflects your laughter?
That's a tough one.
Or share like what kind of art reflects your laughter? Or...
Okay, so I think actually it's a very interesting question,
yeah.
because my art is very whimsical. It's very abstract. It's very, very abstract, and I believe that there is something funny about it in a very quirky kind of way, and it will take forever to explain this. So I might just as well just say that the question is completely understandable, and if you look at my work, you can check it on Instagram, Vahe Berberian Art. On that page you see a lot of my works, and yes, some of them are very serious, but most of them, especially within the past 10 years, have that whimsical quality to them, that fun quality to them, with the choice of colors and with the white background, which I think is very, very important in order to translate a certain situation.
Okay, the next question is about when earlier you said that you were calmer, more focused, more productive when you're in the studio, in your studio. Can you share a little more about that and why you think that is?
Okay, that's a good question too. As I was saying, after the war in Artsakh, or the entire succession of events, the explosion in Beirut, the war, the COVID situation, friends dying, this, that, I was in such a dismal state of mind that I wasn't able to create for a while. I wasn't able to walk into the studio and look at a painting even. But when I stopped social media, when I stopped following the news and everything, and I decided to go back into my previous life, let's say, I began by spending time in the studio, just arranging things, rearranging things, sorting brushes, canvases, this, that. It took a while for me to to get used to my habitat again, and put my music on, listen to music, sit there, watch it, white canvas, and then just do something playfully, very playfully. Make my first mistake, I should say, because I believe that art is a series of mistakes. And you make enough mistakes until you say, huh, this looks interesting. I think I'm going to keep this.
Very nice. Thank you. And the next question is, which mentors impacted you the most, and in what ways did they contribute to your current philosophy?
This is a tough question because I have so many dimensions to to myself that that's very, very difficult to say. When in painting, when I was growing up, I was in love with Francis Bacon. I loved Francis Bacon, and throughout the years, of course, my style changed. I found my own language, and I realized when I discovered Sight Only, I realized that, wow, this man is speaking the same language as I am, but he's even better because he's in his 90s and he's done it longer than I have. So that was a revelation. I mean, when I walked into the museum and I saw a series of Sight Only paintings, I was literally in tears. I was crying. So that, as far as painting goes. As far as novels or theater, I would say from Armenian writers, Vahe Oshagan was one of my inspirations. He was, I would think, he was my mentor. I knew him personally, and I loved him very dearly, very, very dearly. And as far as novels go, I loved Umberto Eco. I loved Alberto Moravia. I loved Milan Kundera. Jean-Paul Sartre, oh, so many of them, so many of them. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And the last question I have is kind of a strange question. Well, to me it is, but maybe not to you. It starts, this is hard to explain. Sometimes I feel guilty when there is so much laughing when there is so much strife in the world. Have you experienced this? How do you handle it? And I think you may have mentioned a little bit about this already.
Actually, you know, this is one thing I say, I can definitely say no. If I have laughed, I have never felt guilty. Sometimes, you know, I have laughed at certain things that a sense of guilt might have accompanied it, but I have refused to accommodate that guilt because anything that's funny. I don't care if it's politically correct or incorrect. You know, I really, honestly don't care. As long as it makes me laugh, I'm fine with it. And to be honest with you, not too many things make me laugh. I also have to say that. You know, what makes me laugh is humor that has a certain absurdity to it. A certain wisdom to it, and a quirkiness, an angle that I would say, I wasn't expecting this.
Great. While you were sharing your answer, one more question came in. Growing up, who in your family had the best sense of humor, and did this help you in your development of your youth?
That's yeah, for sure. When I was growing up, my grandma, my mother's mom, had a sense of humor, and my mom has a sense of humor, and I think I have taken after my mom because she would come up with the weirdest scenarios when I was growing up, and we would laugh so hard, and even though later on we always clashed because she's a devout Christian, a firm believer, and she's very disappointed in me because I lost faith at a very young age. But that humor remained for a long time. Now she's in her 90s, and sometimes she feels guilty when she laughs, but yeah. But I should say, from within my family, my sister Huri, who lives in Arizona and who's 6 years younger than I am, She has a great sense of humor. Sometimes I feel that she should have been the actual comedian and not me. So yeah, but she hardly ever uses it as far as like doing something with the comedy.
And the same person asked a follow-up. Can you give us an example of how your mother made you laugh?
No, with my mom, it's very difficult to say what's intentional and what's not. Okay, so I can give you like something, for example. Okay, I had a show in Boston. I came home. I went and visited her, and she said, "How did it go?" I said, "Great. It was really good." She said, "Did you see anyone I know?" And I said, "Yeah, so many people said hello, say hi to your mom." She goes, "Who?" I said, I can't remember. I said, there was this short woman with glasses, blonde. She goes, could maybe Anahid, who died? I go, "Mom, what do you think?"
Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh at that. I think that's all the questions we had from the chat. So if anyone would like to unmute themselves, I believe you all can, and ask a question directly to Vahe.
Or we could all just laugh out loud together. You made me laugh, Vahe.
Thank you.
Or any other questions or comments or observations?
Mike.
Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Me?
Or what was anyone? I'm sorry if I put you on the spot when it wasn't supposed to be. It's
No,
a Zoom comedy.
I put him on the spot.
Okay.
I have a question for you. Do you have a favorite form of, what form of art is your favorite?
That's a very tough question, because it's like asking a mother which one of your kids is your favorite. Each and every form of art serves a purpose within a certain time period in my life. But the common thread is telling a story. I love entertaining, and that's that. Within that attempt to entertain, I always try to find some kind of wisdom that will enrich the material. But basically, that's what it is. I love to entertain. Now, if I have a story, I think, shall I write a play? Shall I use this story in my monologue, or shall I maybe write a novel with it, or paint? However, with painting, I have to also say that when I go into the studio and I stand in front of the canvas, it's the only art form that I have nothing in mind. I try to erase every preconceived idea of shapes and forms, because I don't want it to be an illustration. Because I believe that that's the difference between an illustration and a painting. An illustration is something that you think of, you have an idea, and then you recreate it on the canvas. A painting is like, in my case, it's completely like I give my unconscious carte blanche to do whatever it pleases. So I think the the one closest to my inner layers, the workings of my mind, are my novels, okay? And the one closest to the inner layers of my unconscious is painting.
Interesting. A couple of more questions came in. Speaking of painting, is there a specific color you gravitate to in your art? And what color would you say your comedy is?
I like that. I like that very much. Good. Okay, so yeah, I love white. I love white. Different shades of white. I love orange, but not, but used very economically. I love black because I believe that without black, there is no contour. And so I love white because a white canvas is like silence to a musician, you know, or an empty page for a writer. And whatever you do on that white canvas will have significance. And especially because my art is very minimal. It's minimalistic. So it's like in silence, when you have complete silence and you go, it has resonance, you know, it takes on a certain significance. While if there is a lot of noise, you know, it gets lost. So it's the same. And I would say with my comedy, it's the same. It's that whiteness, because I prepare what's coming very, very, how should I, serenely. And then there's that spot of orange, which is the punchline or the twist.
Nice. One more, this might be controversial, but do you find there's a difference in humor between Lebanese High, Hayastansi, and Barska High? And for people who may not know that, is Armenians from Lebanon, Armenia, or Iran?
You know, like I said a little while ago, I think we're so much alike. I really think that good humor brings us together, unites us, and I honestly do not. I don't think there is much of a difference between our understanding of humor. The only differences, I think, are linguistic. The only because I tell you, when I talk about universal humor, for example, I have heard jokes about, for example, an aberrancy, and the same joke about a Polish, and then the same joke about a Homsi guy from Syria, and then the same joke about a Flemish guy in Belgium, you know? So that's how you know that if something is funny, then it transcends all nationalities, let alone we're one nation, you know, we come from more or less the same culture. So I don't think there are much differences between us at all.
Great, I think that's...
I would say maybe one thing. When I started stand-up comedy 20 years ago, I realized that there was a huge difference between Hayastansis and Spirka Highs as far as laughter went, because Hayastansis had a hard time laughing out loud, because for them that laughter made them sort of, you know, it felt like if you were laughing, you weren't smart enough. Your laughter should be more contained. Your laughter should be more like a serious laughter, in order not to give the impression that you're crazy. You know, I think this is something. For example, you find in Japanese people also. You know, or Koreans, when they laugh, they you know, close their mouths because the laughter is not considered. But after 20 years, now when I go to Yerevan and when I perform in Armenia, it's a completely different story. That laughter is very hearty. There's like, so I'm thinking maybe it came from the Soviet times. Maybe, you know, that little uncertainty. Should I laugh? Is it okay to laugh? I don't know, maybe.
Interesting. Interesting. And someone commented, we can't wait to see you live. Are there plans that, you know, soon, hopefully, with things being hopefully staying?
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so. One thing for sure, comedy, wearing a mask, it doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it won't work. It won't work. Someone, and I'm gonna butcher this, but it's French, I believe. Someone wanted to ask about your book, Annum du Père et du Fils.
Oh,
I
oh, no.
totally butchered that, didn't I?
Au nom du Père et du Fils.
Okay.
Au nom du Père et du Fils.
Yes.
N'est-ce pas?
It came out recently, about 3 weeks ago. Was it 3 weeks ago in France? It was published by Édition Parenthèse, which is a very respectable, very good publishing company, and it's all over everywhere in bookstores and some French-speaking countries. And it's doing very well, and I'm very, very happy because they did a great job in translating and distributing it.
Yeah. What does it refer to? The theme.
The theme. The theme is well, the story happens in 1980s in Hollywood, where a father and a son who have migrated from Beirut during the war. They live in an apartment in Hollywood, and the father has had the bookstore in Beirut. He has sold the bookstore, and he has brought every single book that he owned to LA with him. And so the entire apartment is full of books. It's and one night, a pimp starts beating one of his prostitutes, and the prostitute runs away and finds shelter in their house, in their apartment. So the story is about the trio that's created, that dynamic, you know, how the dynamic in the household has changed because this 19-year-old prostitute, American, pure, white girl, walks into their life, and how everything changes all of a sudden.
Great, thank you. Looking forward to that.
And I'm glad to say that my new book, my latest novel, is coming out very soon. So I'm excited about that.
Thank you so much.
We're almost about running out of time, but I do have one last question, if you don't mind. When did you know this was your calling? And when you did find out, how did your parents react to it?
I don't think I had a choice. I think I had decided to become an entertainer at a very, very, very young age. And I wish I could show you a picture. A few years ago, my mom found a picture of me I think I'm 2.5, maybe 3 years old, doodling in a notebook. And I said, Mom, what am I doing in this picture? She said, oh, you would stand at the table with that notebook in hand, and you would pretend that you're writing. And it's like you would do all these doodlings, you know? And she said that was your favorite thing to do. So I guess I had decided when I was 2.5, 3 years old.
That's a beautiful story, Vahe. Well, we have come to the end of our program. I want to wholeheartedly say thank you for coming and joining us and sharing, with inspirational words and so on. So thank you everyone for coming. Please take a few minutes to fill out the feedback survey that the link was provided by Kevin. And have a wonderful evening, everybody. Looking forward to seeing, if not all of you, most of you on Monday for our next event.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
This is wonderful. Thank you all for putting it together.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you for coming, Teresa. And
Thank you. It was wonderful.
thank you.
Check out his Instagram page too. There's a lot of
Yes.
good stuff on it.
Yes.
Okay, I'll let you go.
All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Have a good night, everybody.
You too.